Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, February 22nd, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we are going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film managing editor Jacob Hall,
Hello, hello.
weekend editor Brad Oman,
Hey, that's me.
and writers Hoai-Tran
Hey, everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
All right, guys, let's jump right into the news. HT, on, I think it was Friday, late last week, we learned some surprising news about some casting for the upcoming Flash movie that DC is putting together. What did we learn?
Yeah, Latina actress Sasha Calle has landed the role of Supergirl.
There was a
and will
huge
make her
delay in my
debut
end, too,
in
Ben. There was
Andy
like
Muschietti's
5
The
seconds
Flash
of
movie
silence.
opposite Ezra Miller. She reportedly beat out 425 other actresses who had auditioned to play the part of the Girl of Steel. And this will be the introduction of Supergirl in the DC film universe, the DC extended universe, however you want to call it, because there's actually no official name. When this article hit, we were all slightly confused because it said DC Universe, and that was also the name of the former streaming platform for DC. I don't know if it's former anymore, actually. But anyways, this is the new Supergirl of the DC films.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough because I don't think any of us have any experience with this performer before because she comes from the world of soap operas, and I don't think any of us have watched The Young and the Restless, or at least we haven't admitted to as much on episodes of The Water Cooler or anything like that. So it seems to be sort of a fresh face, piece of casting, and hopefully. The DC universe, I think, has done pretty well in terms of casting so far. So maybe this will be another good find on their part. Aisha, do you have any sort of additional thoughts or any reactions about hearing this news?
Like you said, Ben, DC Universe has been pretty good about casting fresh talent and fresh faces for their movies. Gal Gadot was not unknown, but she wasn't as big a star as she is today. And Zack Snyder casting her in Batman v Superman launched her career into the stratosphere. And Andy Muschietti has also been known for doing well at casting relatively new talent with the young stars of his film It. And I do like that this trend toward diversity that the DC films have had really organically since the beginning. Jason Momoa, for example, as Aquaman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and now Sasha Calle as Supergirl. So it's it's a good piece of casting. I don't have anything to say about it because I have not seen The Young and the Restless. But it is interesting that this casting comes after the news that Ray Fisher's character Cyborg will not be in the Flash movie after initially being planned to be in it. So some of the grumblings around that is that maybe her character is being brought in to sort of replace the role that Cyborg would have played. But that's all speculation on our part.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move to our next story, which is another sort of surprising piece of news that really came out of nowhere, and that is that Edgar Wright has found a new directing project. Chris, tell us about that.
Edgar Wright is directing The Running Man, which is based on a Stephen King book. He wrote it under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, and I'm sure, as most people are aware, that was turned into a movie in 1987 starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that movie is not without its charms, but it's also a very, very loose adaptation of the book. And by all accounts, Edgar Wright's take is going to be much more faithful to the source material.
So, Chris, I have to ask you, I know you're a big fan of Edgar Wright's movies. You're obviously a huge Stephen King guy. What do you think about the combination of Wright tackling this material with that caveat that you just mentioned? This is going to be sort of a more faithful adaptation to the book.
This is really cool. This is exciting. The source material is very bleak and dark, and Edgar Wright's made dark-ish things before, but this would probably be like the darkest thing he's made to date, assuming we get to see it sooner rather than later. So then again, Last Night in Soho might be very, very dark for all we know. We haven't seen that yet, but this is definitely darker material for him than we're used to. So I'm very curious to see what he does with it, and I'm sure he'll do a really great job because he's a very good director who understands movement very well, and there's a lot of movement in the story. So I think I'm looking forward to see what he does with this.
Jacob, I suspect you have some thoughts on this one as well, right?
Yeah, the original excuse me, the original Running Man book written by Stephen King is one of the darkest things King ever wrote. He used the Richard Bachman name to really pump out some really evil stuff. And the Running Man movie from the 80s, as Chris said, is charming and goofy, but also it feels very much of its time. Like, here's what a game show where you fight for your life will look like in the 80s. Whereas the book feels ahead of its time in that it feels made for the internet age, because it's not just, a maze full of killers like Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the movie. It is the entire world is the playground. You run wherever you want, wherever you can afford, wherever you can fight, and anybody's allowed to report you or hunt you down. And like, the entire world is participating in the game show. It feels very much ahead of its time in how people would interact with a homicidal, televised reality / game show. So I really do think that's why it feels relevant now. This doesn't feel like this could be just a remake of the Schwarzenegger movie, which is, like I said, charming. 2021 feels like the right time to adapt that book as written, where life and death become amusement, for everybody possibly watching or streaming or in the physical location of the people who are playing this game. Everybody plays it, and that felt earth shattering to me when I read this book 20 years ago, and it feels like right for this moment.
I think we should also note in Chris's article, Chris, you sort of round up a bunch of the projects that Edgar Wright has signed on to over the past, I don't know, year and some change. There are a lot of things a lot of irons in the fire there. So, when we very first heard this news, it was kind of like, this is exciting, but I wonder if this is one of those projects that's just going to get announced but never actually happen. But I guess it's worth noting that this movie is a quote unquote top priority for Paramount. So hopefully that means that, things will actually move forward sooner rather than later. And this will be one of those movies that actually does get made instead of just something that sort of falls by the wayside. So let's move
I also want to add real
yes.
quick, Ben, sorry. If this is a faithful adaptation, it is as bleak and as dark and as upsetting as the book is, which is a horror book. It really is a action horror. All the goofy silliness of the original movie is not in the book. So between this and him making his first horror movie, Last Night in Soho, and him also lining up to make an adaptation of the incredibly bleak thriller The Chain, I do wonder if Edgar Wright is really trying to not leave behind the sort of goofball Cornetto trilogy movies, but trying to prove that he's a lot more than that. And this lineup of upcoming movies suggests that he wants to take a darker turn. He wants to prove that he's not just, the Shaun the Dead guy.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so our next story involves a video game adaptation, but for television. Brad, give us the details on that.
Yeah, so one of the biggest early video game successes on the original PlayStation was a title called Twisted Metal. It's this game that's basically this battle royale where players control a variety of deadly vehicles that have various weapons, machine guns, mines, missiles, all this stuff, and it's basically a fight to the last man standing. And it's been a while since there was even a new title from this franchise. 2012 was the last time there was a new version of Twisted Metal available, and that was on PlayStation 3. But for some reason, Will Arnett, Deadpool writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, and Cobra Kai writer Michael Jonathan Smith are turning the Twisted Metal video game franchise into a new TV series. And the synopsis feels like it has a little bit of Mad Max Fury Road inspiration. The series is described like this. The action comedy follows a motor-mouth outsider offered a chance at a better life, but only if he can successfully deliver a mysterious package across a post-apocalyptic wasteland. With the help of a trigger-happy car thief, he'll face savage marauders driving vehicles of destruction and other dangers of the open road, including a deranged clown who drives an all-too-familiar ice cream truck. And that clown, of course, is often referred to as Sweet Tooth. Apparently, his real name, which I wasn't aware of this until I looked into this, is Needles Kane. And that character has been the face of the Twisted Metal series since it began. So this really feels like it came out of nowhere because even though Twisted Metal has, fans who grew up playing the games on previous iterations of PlayStation, it hasn't really been relevant in a while. So I wonder if maybe there'll be a new version of the game coming at some point to help bring more attention to the series, or if the series could inspire a new version of the game, especially, in the wake of games like Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone, bringing the Battle Royale gameplay to the forefront of gaming right now. But I don't know. This just seems totally random.
Do you think that Will Arnett is going to be in front of the camera on this? Do you think he would the persona that he's crafted would fit inside the Twisted Metal world, Brad?
I mean, I could easily see him maybe being like, I don't know how much we're gonna see of Sweet Tooth necessarily, but he's always wearing like a clown mask or has clown makeup or whatever, and so they could maybe use Will Arnett's voice to be Sweet Tooth, but there's nothing that says he'll be involved in that capacity. But he's definitely executive producing along with everybody else that's involved. So I don't know, that could be cool to see though.
Yeah, I went back into our archives to see if there were any other Twisted Metal potential adaptations over the years. And back in 2012, around that time that other game came out, Brian Taylor, who is one half of the directing duo of Neveldine and Taylor, was attached to direct a movie version of Twisted Metal, which I feel like would have been kind of perfect, like especially around that era, like the Crank and Gamer and Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance era, when Neveldine and Taylor were really like, putting pedal to the metal. I feel like that would have been kind of amazing to see. But now, all these years later, it sounds like we don't have any directors or like we were just talking about, in front of the camera talent attached yet. But I guess we'll have to keep our ears open for that. So our next story involves I guess another series of moving vehicles. There's a remake of Train to Busan coming, and Chris, that project has now found a director, right?
Yes, and I apologize up front if I say this man's name incorrectly, but Timo Tjahjanto, who directed the really great and very violent recent Netflix action movie, The Night Comes for Us, and he also co-directed Headshot, is directing the remake. And this is sort of like a mixed blessing. I don't know how you want to describe this, but like I said, he's a very exciting filmmaker, but I'm so apprehensive about remaking this movie, an American remake of this movie. It was an international hit. I feel like everyone is well aware of it. And I always just feel slightly nervous when it's like, oh, we got to remake this for Americans. But he's such an exciting filmmaker that it's going to be very hard to ignore this film whenever it comes out. So, that's how I feel.
HT, I know you're a big fan of Train to Busan. Have you seen any of Tjahjanto's previous works?
I haven't seen The Night Comes for Us. I've heard a lot about it from both Chris and you, and I think that I don't know if I could stomach it for a little bit, just because I think, Ben, you talked about how it was excessively violent in a way that could be enjoyed by some, but I don't know if I would be those few.
Mm-hmm.
But I have mixed feelings about this, because Train to Busan is such a stellar piece of visual horror storytelling, and it's such like this great little like claustrophobic action set piece that I feel like doesn't need to be remade. But I am going to give it the benefit of the doubt, because I hear such great things about this director, and it's great to see an Indonesian action filmmaker like getting the reins behind a big project like this. So I'm just benefit of the doubt.
Jacob, I suspect you probably have some thoughts about this one too. I'm guessing you've seen VHS 2 and the ABCs of Death, which were some of his sort of earlier movies.
Yeah, he's been a regular, his movies at Fantastic Fest, which I've been attending for a decade, for years and years. So I've been seeing his stuff for a long time, seeing him grow as a director. And I think he's an incredible filmmaker. I think that The Night Comes for Us is probably one of the best action movies of the past 10 years, as violent as it is. It's unrelenting. I also love his recent demonic possession horror movie, May the Devil Take You. His VHS 2 segment is legendary. So good. I think he's an incredible filmmaker, and I want him to get the Hollywood money, the Hollywood paycheck, the scope of a Hollywood movie. I feel like a stellar Indonesian filmmaker being hired to remake a South Korean horror movie in America feels like a recipe for him losing creative control very quickly. So I hope that's not the case. But he's an incredibly exciting filmmaker. Go to IMDb, pick a title that you think sounds interesting. May Devil Take You and Night Comes for Us are both Netflix movies. They were both picked up from the festival circuit by Netflix. So even if this turns out poorly, I think he's gonna be around for a while, and his movies are absolutely incredible. So color me intrigued but nervous.
Okay. And then our last news story of the day involves Gareth Evans' new movie. He's the director of movies like The Raid. Chris, tell us about that project.
Yes, it's called Havoc, and it's going to star Tom Hardy. Yeah. Sorry, I was scrolling the story for the synopsis and I couldn't find it fast enough, but now I have. So pretend I was very professional right there.
I'm leaving all of this in.
Please do. So here's the synopsis. After a drug deal gone wrong, a bruised detective must fight his way through a criminal underworld to rescue a politician's estranged son while unraveling a deep web of corruption and conspiracy that ensnares his entire city. And you know what? That's a really generic, bland plot synopsis. I'm just going to say it. But Gareth Evans is an exciting director. Tom Hardy is an exciting actor, especially when he's just going really weird and doing stuff that makes everyone in the audience sit up and say, what the fuck is this guy doing? So while that might not be the most exciting of plot synopses, I'm excited to see how this turns out.
Chris, I never saw Apostle, which was Gareth Evans' other movie that he made for Netflix. And I think this project, like when Havoc, this new movie that we're talking about, was announced, it also came with the news that Evans has signed a deal with Netflix where he's going to be making movies with them for the next several years. But I have not seen Apostle. And isn't that movie just like kind of the same thing? Like a bruised hero who has to fight his way through an underworld to rescue somebody? Like, isn't that the plot of that movie?
Apostle is more folk horror-y, and it's on an island, and it's a lot more secluded. So... But yes, they're similar-ish, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Okay, Jacob, I know you're a fan of Gareth Evans' work. Do you have any thoughts about this project?
Yeah, I think Apostle's really good, and I think this sounds like it doesn't have any horror in it, where there's a lot of supernatural horror in Apostles. That's one big differentiation. But I also will add that Gareth Evans and Timo Tjahjanto have collaborated on several occasions, including the earlier mentioned VHS 2 Summit, which is co-directed by the both of them. So effectively, with Gareth Evans and Timo both getting new high-profile projects in the same news episode is really unusual because they just have happened to have worked together like for years and years. Because Evans has made a lot of movies in Indonesia, where Tjahjanto is from. So trivia. That's it. Trivia.
Chris, what do you make about of Tom Hardy being cast as the lead here? I mean, obviously he's like a physical dude, and Gareth Evans is known for making movies where he really puts his heroes through the ringer in terms of the physicality there. Do you think that Hardy is like a good fit for this, I guess, this premise and this director? Absolutely.
Tom Hardy is a good fit for anything. Put him in all the movies, I say, because he's, all joking aside, while he does tend to do really weird stuff, especially lately, it's always interesting. He's always really committed to whatever he's doing. And I imagine there's going to be a lot for him to work with here, especially, on a physical level. So I do think this is good casting.
Brad, where do you fall in the Gareth Evans train? Are you a fan of his stuff? I know that Chris and Jacob talk about him, relatively frequently, but I don't think I've had many conversations with you about Gareth Evans' filmography.
I absolutely love the Raid movies. They totally knocked me out with just how incredible, kind of really choreographed the action was, and just how hard hitting. All the action sequences were. So I'm disappointed that it seems like we'll probably never get to see the Raid 3, but I'm down to see, anything else that he's up to.
HT, have you seen the Raid films or maybe Maranto, which was like one of his first movies?
I've seen the first Raid film. So and it's great, but I don't think I can chime in on this that much.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
No, all good. I'm curious, has anybody here seen Gangs of London, which is the I guess AMC / maybe BBC series that Gareth Evans has been working on? It's kind of tough to watch. I think it's only available through AMC Plus, which is like yet another streaming service. So it's, as far as I understand, it's like relatively difficult to access. And people, obviously already subscribe to like a billion services. So I don't know. Nobody else has seen that show.
I've heard of it. I think I like wrote up a trailer once, but I have not seen it. No.
Yeah,
I really wanted to see it, but it's, like you said, literally impossible to find. If it was one of the shows where they need to dump the first season on Netflix to get people interested in it, because I think there's a pedigree there that deserves our attention more than
anything else. Man, I'm like really, I want to see that show so bad, but I cannot justify subscribing to AMC Plus just for that. So if anybody else is out there, in that same boat, then yeah, maybe I don't know what we can do. Start some sort of campaign to maybe get it on Netflix, like Jacob was saying. So who knows? Maybe see if you can start up a hashtag or something like that. But all right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can find more about all the stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on iTunes. That really, really does help us out a lot. If you could take just a few seconds to do that, we would appreciate it. Tell your friends about the show. Spread the word any way you can. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.